Give me a child, I'll give you a home. A widow's last deal in the Wild West, Mary Thompson sat on the creaky wooden porch of her small cabin, staring at the endless stretch of golden plains that seemed to vanish into the horizon. The wind whispered softly through the tall grass, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers mixed with the dust of the trail. Her eyes, tired but determined, watched her young daughter, Clara, chasing a stray butterfly across the yard. Mary's heart ached with love for the little girl, but it ached in another way too, a deep, gnawing fear that she couldn't provide enough for them both in this harsh land. The past year had been unforgiving. The death of her husband, Robert, had left a void in the household and in her heart. He had been her partner in every sense, tending the cattle, repairing fences, and keeping the small homestead running. But one night, a gang of rustlers had ambushed him while he was rounding up the last of the cattle. Mary still remembered the sound of gunfire echoing through the night, the panic in Clara's eyes, and the cold, empty feeling when Robert never returned. Since that dreadful day, Mary had carried the weight of survival alone. Every morning she rose before the sun, milking the small herd of goats, tending to the tiny vegetable patch, and fetching water from the creek half a mile away. Clara was just 6 years old, full of life and curiosity, but Mary knew that the child's needs were growing faster than her own ability to provide. Food was scarce, the winter ahead promised to be cruel, and the debts she had accumulated for seeds and supplies weighed heavily on her. Neighbors were few in this part of the West. Those who lived nearby kept to themselves, wary of the dangers that lurked in every shadow, wild animals, thieves, and the unpredictability of nature. Sometimes Mary would visit the small trading post in the nearest town, but she had to be careful not to appear desperate. Pride and fear of judgment kept her from asking for too much help. She was a widow, yes, but she wanted to be a strong one. One afternoon, as Mary was mending a torn sleeve for Clara, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. She squinted, shading her eyes with her hand. A rider was approaching, moving with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. As the figure drew closer, she noticed the polished boots, the neatly trimmed coat, and the glint of wealth in the saddlebag, a stark contrast to her own worn attire and weathered hands. The man dismounted smoothly, his eyes scanning the property with interest. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. His voice was deep, steady, and carried authority. "Name S. Silas Kane. I own most of the ranches in this area. I hear you're running this place on your own." Mary stood, brushing dust from her apron. She studied him carefully. Wealthy men often had their own agendas in these parts. Trust came hard. "Yes," she said cautiously. "I manage it myself. What do you want?" Silas smiled faintly as if he had expected her suspicion. "I don't mean any harm. I've seen widows struggle out here, and I know the land isn't kind to those alone. I have a proposal for you, one that could give you security, a proper home, and peace of mind." Mary's heart raced. Offers of help often carried strings attached, and she knew better than to jump too quickly. "And what do you want in return?" she asked, gripping the edge of the porch. Silas's expression turned serious. "I need a child to be cared for. For a few years under my roof where she will be safe and raised properly. In exchange, you will have a home, supplies, and protection for you and your little girl." Mary froze. The wind seemed to stop for a moment, and she could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Give him her child, her Clara? The very thought was unbearable, yet the offer stirred something deep inside her, a glimmer of hope that she might survive, that her daughter might thrive even if it meant making a painful sacrifice. She looked at Clara, who was now examining a ladybug crawling across a blade of grass. The child's innocence, her laughter, and her bright eyes made Mary's chest ache. How could she consider letting someone else raise her? And yet the thought of watching Clara go hungry, of not having shelter during the coming winter, of facing the lawless plains alone, it was almost unbearable. That night, Mary sat by the fire, the flickering flames casting long shadows across the cabin walls. Clara slept soundly in her small bed, unaware of the storm raging in her mother's mind. Mary thought about her late husband, the life they had dreamed of, and the harsh reality she now faced. Every choice seemed to carry risk, every decision a potential disaster. She had always been proud and independent, but pride alone could not protect her daughter from the world outside. The next morning, she went to the creek, letting the cold water run over her hands as she considered her options. She replayed Silas's words over and over, weighing them against the risks and consequences. Would the child be safe? Would she be treated well? Could she bear the separation? And yet, the promise of shelter, food, and security was like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. Mary returned home, determined to think clearly. She sat Clara on her lap, holding her close. "Mama has to make a very important decision," she whispered, brushing the child's hair back. Clara looked up with trust and curiosity, completely unaware of the gravity of the situation. Mary's eyes welled with tears, but she knew she had to be strong. Over the following days, Mary visited Silas's ranch, observing the environment and the way he cared for the other children. His home was large and well-kept, with a garden, clean rooms, and plenty of food. The children were happy, learning, and safe. Mary noticed the kindness in his interactions, but she remained wary. She knew that even good intentions could mask hidden agendas, especially in a place where law and order were fragile. As the days passed, the weight of the decision pressed harder on her shoulders. She thought of the coming winter, the harsh storms, the wild animals, and the rustlers who roamed nearby. She thought of the empty cabin, the cold nights, and the long, lonely days that awaited them. The reality was undeniable. Without help, she might not survive, and Clara's life could be at risk. Finally, after a week of contemplation, Mary called Silas to meet her at the edge of her property. She carried Clara in her arms, feeling the warmth of the child against her chest, feeling the unspoken bond that had grown stronger through hardship. Silas arrived as promised, his expression calm and respectful. "I've thought about your offer," Mary said, her voice steady but trembling slightly. "I don't like it, but I see that it may be the only way to protect my daughter and myself. I will agree on one condition, that Clara is safe, well-treated, and that I can see her whenever possible." Silas nodded, understanding the unspoken fear and love in her words. "You have my word," he said. "I will care for her as if she were my own, and you will have what you need to survive and thrive." The agreement was made, and Mary felt a mixture of relief, fear, and sorrow. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she had made a choice that prioritized her daughter's safety over her own comfort. That night, she sat on the porch, holding Clara tightly, whispering promises of love and courage. She watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, and felt a small flicker of hope that perhaps, even in the harsh Wild West, love and sacrifice could carve a path towards survival and a better life. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Mary taught Clara everything she could before the girl would temporarily leave: how to care for the animals, how to recognize the signs of storms, how to navigate the rough terrain, and most importantly, how to be brave. Each lesson was infused with love and urgency, for Mary knew that letting go, even for a time, was one of the hardest challenges she would ever face. When the day came for Clara to leave, Mary carried her to Silas's carriage, tears streaming down her face. Clara clung to her mother, sensing the gravity of the moment. "I'll be brave, Mama," she whispered. Mary nodded, forcing a smile that belied the ache in her heart. "I know you will, my love. Always remember, no matter where you are, I am with you." As the carriage rolled away, Mary watched until it disappeared over the horizon. She felt an emptiness she had never known, a silence in her soul, but also a strange sense of relief. Clara would be safe, cared for, and provided for, a small but vital assurance in a world that often offered none. Mary turned back to her cabin, her hands aching from the day's labor and her heart heavy with longing. She knew that the coming months would test her resilience and courage, but she was determined to survive, to honor the promise she had made to her daughter, and to face the harsh realities of the Wild West with unwavering strength. The plains stretched endlessly before her, wild and untamed, but Mary Thompson was a woman shaped by hardship, love, and sacrifice. She would endure, no matter what storms lay ahead. Clara's first days at Silas Kane's ranch were a whirlwind of new sights, sounds, and routines. The house was much larger than her tiny cabin back home, with polished wooden floors, wide hallways, and tall windows that let in sunlight like streams of gold. Clara had never seen so many rooms, nor so many children. Some were Silas's relatives, others were wards like her, children taken in for safety and education. She felt both excitement and unease, clinging to the small locket Mary had given her, a reminder of home and her mother's love. Silas himself was a commanding presence. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with ease and authority, yet there was a kindness in his eyes that made Clara feel safe despite the strangeness of this new world. He welcomed her gently, showing her the room she would sleep in and introducing her to the other children. "This will be your home for a while," he said. "You will learn, grow, and be safe here. You have my word." Clara nodded silently, unsure if she fully understood the promise, but the warmth in his voice gave her some comfort. Mary, meanwhile, returned to her cabin alone, the silence heavy and unfamiliar. The yard seemed emptier, the wind colder without Clara's laughter to fill the air. Yet she felt a small relief knowing her daughter was safe and well-fed. She spent her days tending to the homestead with renewed determination, repairing fences, planting more crops, and mending what little she could. Every task was a reminder of the harsh reality of life on the frontier, but also a symbol of hope, that she could survive and provide for herself, even if Clara was temporarily away. Back at the ranch, Clara struggled to adjust. The routines were strict. Chores had to be completed on time, lessons in reading and arithmetic were expected, and manners were emphasized. She missed the freedom of running across the plains, feeling the wind on her face and the soft grass beneath her feet. Yet she was also fascinated by all the new experiences. She learned to ride a horse with care, to feed the chickens and goats, and to bake bread in the large kitchen. Each day brought challenges, small victories, and a growing sense of resilience. Despite the structure and comfort of the ranch, Clara's heart ached for her mother. She would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, holding her locket close. She imagined Mary tending to the goats, gathering water and thinking of her. The longing was a heavy companion, but it also fueled her determination to be brave and obedient. She wanted to honor the choice her mother had made, even if it meant enduring this separation. Mary's life at the homestead was no easier. The work was relentless, and the loneliness was profound. She often walked the fields at dusk, her thoughts drifting to Clara and Silas's promises. The wind carried faint sounds from the distant ranch, and sometimes she imagined hearing her daughter's laughter carried across the plains. She worried constantly, would Clara adapt? Would she be happy? Would she feel abandoned? Each worry pressed on her chest like a weight, but Mary knew that worry alone could not protect her child. Action, hard work, and perseverance were the only shields she had. Time passed, and Clara began to flourish in her new environment. She learned quickly, mastering horseback riding and the skills needed to help on a large ranch. Silas took a particular interest in her education, ensuring she had books to read and lessons to keep her mind sharp. He was firm but fair, and his attention was steady and unwavering. Clara began to admire him, not as a replacement for her father or her mother, but as someone who could guide her in this strange, new world. Despite this, Clara never forgot her mother. Each week, Mary would write letters, small scraps of paper with careful handwriting, folded neatly and tied with twine. Clara treasured these letters, reading them again and again, feeling the warmth of her mother's love in every word. They became a lifeline, a connection between the safety of Silas's home and the freedom of her mother's cabin. Meanwhile, Mary faced her own challenges. A particularly harsh storm hit the plains, tearing through the fields and threatening the crops she had planted. The wind howled, tearing at the roof of her cabin and threatening to knock over the small fence she had repaired just days before. Mary worked tirelessly through the rain, patching leaks, securing doors, and making sure the livestock were safe. Her body ached, her hands were blistered, but she refused to give in to despair. Survival had become a daily battle, and Mary was determined to win. In the midst of these hardships, Mary learned the value of the deal she had made with Silas. The promise of support allowed her to focus on strengthening the homestead, building storage for food, and reinforcing the walls against future storms. She began to see small successes, crops that survived the storm, fences that held strong, and a steady supply of water from the creek. Each victory was a quiet reassurance that she had made the right decision, even if her heart ached for her daughter. Back at the ranch, Clara faced her own small trials. She struggled with homesickness, missing the quiet nights under the stars at her own cabin and the simple warmth of her mother's arms. Yet she also encountered moments of joy, riding through the open pastures, playing with other children, and learning to cook meals from the large, bustling kitchen. Silas guided her with patience, teaching her not only practical skills, but also the importance of responsibility, courage, and compassion. As months turned into seasons, the bond between Clara and Silas grew stronger, though Clara never stopped thinking of Mary. Silas never tried to replace her mother. Instead, he encouraged her to write, to maintain her connection with home and to trust in the love that had sent her there. Clara began to understand that the separation was not abandonment, but a protective measure, one that allowed her to grow safely while her mother ensured the stability of their home. Mary, too, began to grow. The hardships she faced on the frontier taught her resilience, resourcefulness, and patience. She became known among the few neighbors as a woman of courage, admired for her ability to survive alone in a dangerous, unpredictable world. She learned to anticipate storms, fend off wild animals, and even handle the occasional encounter with rustlers or troublemakers. Each challenge strengthened her, and the thought of Clara's safety drove her to push harder, endure more, and never give up. One day, a letter arrived for Mary, written in Clara's careful handwriting. She described the ranch, the chores, the lessons, and the friends she had made. She wrote of the kindness Silas had shown, of the warmth of the home, and of her longing to see her mother. Reading the letter, Mary's heart swelled with both pride and sorrow. Her daughter was growing into a capable, brave young girl, yet the ache of separation never fully faded. The years slowly passed, each day marked by routine, growth, and the quiet rhythm of life on the frontier. Clara learned to ride with confidence, to tend to animals, and to face challenges with courage. Mary strengthened her homestead, planting new crops, repairing old structures, and even helping neighbors who needed guidance. The bond between mother and daughter remained unbroken, maintained through letters, memories, and the shared hope of reunion. Despite the growing comfort and stability, tension remained. Mary knew that her deal with Silas carried uncertainty. He was a man of wealth and influence, and while he had shown kindness, she could not predict his intentions fully. Rumors in the surrounding settlements suggested that wealthy men sometimes sought to claim children permanently under the guise of protection. Mary remained vigilant, determined to ensure that Clara's safety and future would always remain her priority. Silas, meanwhile, continued to observe both Mary and Clara with a careful eye. He respected Mary's courage and determination, recognizing that her love for Clara was both deep and unwavering. Yet he also recognized the potential in Clara, a bright, capable child who could thrive under the guidance of both her mother and the structured environment of his ranch. His role was delicate, balancing care with respect for Mary's authority as a mother. The story of Mary and Clara spread quietly among neighbors and travelers who passed through the area. Some admired Mary's bravery and sacrifice. Others whispered about the unusual arrangement, questioning her decision. But Mary paid little attention to gossip. She knew the truth of her choice, the depth of her love for her daughter, and the necessity of ensuring Clara's safety in a harsh, unpredictable world. As the second year of Clara's stay at the ranch came to a close, both mother and daughter had grown in ways neither could have imagined. Clara had matured into a thoughtful, brave, and capable child, able to face challenges with resilience. Mary had transformed from a grieving widow into a skilled, confident woman who could handle the dangers of the frontier with determination and ingenuity. Yet, despite the growth and success, both longed for the day they could reunite fully, free from uncertainty and fear. The story of these months, the struggles, the adjustments, the growth, and the quiet victories, set the stage for the next chapter. The bond between mother and daughter, though stretched across distance and circumstance, remained unbreakable. And though the Wild West continued to test their courage, it also shaped them into the strong, determined women they were becoming. Time moved on the Wild West plains, each day marked by sunrises that painted the sky in gold and red, and sunsets that cast long shadows over the fields. Clara had grown taller, stronger, and wiser, yet she never forgot the small cabin where she had spent her early years. Every morning, she rose with the other children at Silas Kane's ranch, carrying out her chores with diligence, but her mind often wandered to Mary. She clutched her locket tightly, feeling her mother's presence as a comforting warmth against her chest. Clara's days were full of lessons, both practical and personal. She learned to ride with precision, to care for the animals, and to manage tasks that would have been overwhelming for many adults. Silas watched her carefully, offering guidance but never overstepping boundaries. He treated her with respect and encouragement, recognizing the spark of determination that mirrored her mother's own strength. Clara began to appreciate his care, understanding that he meant no harm, yet she always returned her thoughts to Mary, longing for the warmth of her mother's arms and the quiet reassurance of home. Mary, on her side of the plains, had grown into a formidable woman. Her homestead, once a fragile collection of wooden boards and struggling crops, had flourished. She built new fences, expanded her small vegetable garden, and secured storage for the harvest. Her hands were calloused and strong, her body hardened by the relentless labor, yet her spirit remained tender when she thought of Clara. Each letter she received from her daughter was read multiple times, each word treasured like gold. Clara described her lessons, her friends, and her adventures, and Mary found pride in her daughter's growth, even through the ache of distance. Despite the passage of time, tension lingered in Mary's heart. She knew that Silas's intentions, though kind, were not entirely transparent. Wealthy men of the West were known to claim what they wanted, and while he had been generous, Mary could not dismiss the unease that tugged at her conscience. Would Clara truly remain hers, or would the rancher grow attached in ways that could alter her child's future? Each day, Mary found herself balancing gratitude for his support with cautious vigilance, determined never to lose sight of her ultimate goal, keeping her daughter safe and united with her. Clara, too, faced inner conflict. She admired Silas and appreciated the security he provided, yet a quiet fear lingered. She worried that her mother might not come to reclaim her, that the bond they shared could be broken by distance or circumstance. The children around her noticed her hesitation, but Clara never spoke openly of her fears. Instead, she focused on learning and growing, channeling her longing into courage and resilience. She discovered the joy of small victories, mastering a tricky horse-riding maneuver, helping another child who had fallen behind, or learning a new skill in the kitchen. Each achievement strengthened her, yet it also reminded her of the family she had left behind. As Clara adjusted to her life at the ranch, Mary faced her own tests of endurance. One morning, as she was inspecting the fences, she noticed tracks in the dirt, fresh and suspicious. Her heart raced. Rustlers had been seen in the area, and the thought of them targeting her homestead made her blood run cold. She moved quickly, securing the livestock and hiding valuables, her mind working with urgency and precision. She realized that she could not rely solely on her own strength. Survival required vigilance, intelligence, and sometimes courage that bordered on recklessness. The threat of danger brought an unexpected visitor, Silas. He had come, claiming he had heard rumors of rustlers nearby and had decided to check on Mary's safety. Mary was initially wary. Why would he risk himself for her? But his presence was reassuring. Together, they inspected the homestead, reinforcing fences and devising a plan to protect the animals. Silas's knowledge of the land and experience with threats proved invaluable, and Mary began to see that he was more than a wealthy rancher. He was a man who understood the harsh realities of the West and could navigate them with skill and courage. Over time, an unspoken bond developed between Mary and Silas. It was built on mutual respect and shared experience, though Mary never lost sight of her priorities. She knew her duty was to Clara, and while Silas's help was welcome, her heart remained firmly rooted in her role as a mother. Silas, too, respected Mary's determination and love for her child. He admired her strength, her resourcefulness, and her ability to persevere despite overwhelming odds. The relationship was complicated, tinged with gratitude, admiration, and the subtle tension of trust yet to be fully earned. Clara's growth continued, both in skill and character. She became confident in her abilities, learning to anticipate challenges and solve problems with a thoughtful mind. She helped the younger children with chores, offered guidance when conflicts arose, and developed a sense of responsibility that belied her age. Silas noticed her maturity and often complimented her, reinforcing the importance of her education, diligence, and moral integrity. Yet in her heart, Clara's thoughts always returned to Mary. She longed for their reunion, dreaming of the day when they could share stories, laughter, and warmth without the separation imposed by circumstance. One evening, as Mary prepared dinner in her cabin, she heard the distant sound of a horse approaching. She tensed, worried it might be trouble, but as the rider drew closer, she recognized the familiar gait and hat. It was Silas. He dismounted and greeted her with a nod, his expression calm but serious. "Mary," he said, "I've been thinking about Clara. She's growing so quickly, and I want to make sure she remains safe and true to herself. I need to discuss something important with you." Mary's heart quickened. She invited him in, and over a simple meal, Silas spoke candidly. He admitted that he had grown fond of Clara, that her presence had brought warmth and energy to his ranch. He also reassured Mary that his intentions were honorable, that he had no desire to keep Clara from her mother. Yet he wanted to ensure that the girl was prepared for the world she would eventually face, whether with him or back with Mary. The conversation was delicate, filled with honesty, respect, and the unspoken acknowledgement of the complexity of human relationships. Mary listened intently, weighing his words carefully. She understood the potential risks, but also recognized the genuine care Silas had shown. Her fears were eased slightly, yet she remained vigilant. She reaffirmed her priorities. Clara's safety, growth, and ultimate reunion with her mother were paramount. Silas agreed, acknowledging her authority and the unbreakable bond between mother and child. The discussion ended with mutual understanding, laying the groundwork for cooperation and trust moving forward. In the months that followed, Clara continued to thrive, her days filled with work, learning, and the growing sense of belonging that Silas's ranch provided. She discovered new talents, such as managing the livestock efficiently, helping with repairs, and even assisting in planning meals for the household. Each success strengthened her self-esteem and sense of independence, yet the letters from Mary remained her most cherished treasure. She read them repeatedly, drawing strength from her mother's words of encouragement, love, and reassurance. Mary's homestead flourished as well. She became known among neighbors for her resilience, intelligence, and kindness. She helped others when possible, sharing advice, seeds, and knowledge of the land. Her reputation as a capable, brave woman grew, earning her respect and admiration. Yet her heart remained tethered to Clara, and every evening she paused to write letters, each word filled with love, pride, and longing. She knew that her sacrifices were shaping her daughter into a strong, capable young woman, and that thought sustained her through the challenges of frontier life. One day, a small crisis tested their bond. A fire broke out in a nearby field, threatening the crops and livestock. Mary sprang into action, rallying neighbors and using every skill she had acquired to contain the blaze. Clara, hearing of the fire, was filled with worry, her thoughts immediately turning to her mother. Silas reassured her, but Clara could not shake the fear. The incident highlighted the constant danger of the West, the unpredictability of life, and the importance of courage, preparation, and unity. Through these trials, Clara matured further. She learned to balance fear with action, uncertainty with planning, and longing with patience. She recognized the depth of her mother's love and the sacrifices that Mary had made to ensure her safety and growth. Clara also began to appreciate the guidance and protection provided by Silas, understanding that while he was not a replacement for Mary, he played an important role in her development. Mary, observing her daughter's letters and progress, felt a mixture of pride and concern. She marveled at Clara's resilience, bravery, and intelligence, yet she never allowed herself to grow complacent. The Wild West was unforgiving, and complacency could be deadly. Mary continued to improve the homestead, anticipate threats, and plan for the future, all while maintaining her bond with Clara through letters, memories, and steadfast hope. As Part 3 draws to a close, the story has reached a point of tension and growth. Clara is becoming a capable, independent young girl, nurtured by the safety of Silas's ranch, but never forgetting her mother. Mary has transformed into a strong, respected woman, skilled in survival and leadership. The bond between mother and daughter remains unbroken, yet challenges still lie ahead. Rumors, unforeseen dangers, and the ever-present threat of uncertainty in the Wild West promise that the final chapter will test their courage, love, and resilience in ways they cannot yet imagine. The stage is set for the climax, where loyalty, bravery, and the strength of family will face the ultimate test. Both Mary and Clara have grown through sacrifice and perseverance, but the question remains, will the bond they have fought to preserve withstand the trials that lie ahead, and will the reunion they both long for finally arrive? The wind swept across the plains, carrying the scent of wildflowers and distant smoke from the faraway hills. Mary Thompson stood at the edge of her homestead, watching the horizon with a mix of hope and worry. It had been years since Clara had gone to live with Silas Kane, and though letters kept them connected, the longing for reunion never faded. Mary's homestead had grown strong and secure, her fields were full, and her fences stood firm against storms and wandering animals. But no accomplishment could replace the empty space in her heart where her daughter should have been. Clara, now older and stronger, had learned so much at Silas's ranch. She rode with confidence, cared for the younger children, and managed chores with skill beyond her years. Yet each night, she clutched her mother's letters close, reading them over and over until the words became a lifeline connecting her to the home she had left behind. She dreamed of the day she could run into her mother's arms, hear her voice, and feel the warmth she had missed for so long. Silas had been kind, guiding her and providing safety, but he was not her mother. Clara knew that no amount of comfort could replace Mary's love. A sudden knock on Mary's cabin door broke her thoughts. She opened it to find a rider covered in dust and sweat. "Mary," he said, panting, "it's Silas. There's trouble near the homestead. Rustlers are planning to raid the nearby settlements." "I thought you should know immediately." Mary's heart pounded. She had prepared for storms, droughts, and wild animals, but human threats were harder to predict. She quickly gathered her tools, weapons, and essentials, and ran through a plan she had practiced many times in her mind. "We'll protect what we can," she said, her voice firm though fear gnawed at her. "I won't let anything happen to Clara, no matter what." Silas nodded, admiration in his eyes. "Good, we'll work together. You have grown stronger than I imagined." His words were a reminder of the unusual bond they shared, one built on respect, necessity, and shared concern for Clara's safety. Together they rode toward the danger, ready to face whatever threat awaited them. At the ranch, Clara had sensed something was wrong. The children whispered about strangers seen on the roads, and the air felt tense with anticipation. When Silas arrived, he explained the situation carefully. Clara's eyes widened, fear mixing with determination. "I have to help," she said firmly. Silas hesitated, but he could see the resolve in her gaze. "You've learned well, Clara. Stay close and follow instructions, and you will be safe." The group worked quickly. They reinforced doors, secured livestock, and set up watch points around the property. Clara moved with confidence, helping the younger children and ensuring they understood what to do. She felt a surge of pride and responsibility. This was her chance to prove her courage, not just to Silas, but to herself and to the mother she longed to see. As night fell, the rustlers approached under the cover of darkness. Shadows moved across the fields, and the faint sound of horses' hooves echoed in the distance. Mary, Silas, and Clara stayed hidden, waiting for the right moment to act. Mary's heart raced with worry for her daughter, but she knew that Clara had grown strong, capable, and brave. They were not just defending the ranch, they were defending the future they had fought so hard to build. The confrontation came swiftly. Rustlers attempted to breach the outer fence, but Mary and Silas, along with Clara and the other children, had anticipated their moves. Mary called out commands, Silas guided the defense, and Clara moved with precision, ensuring the safety of the younger children. The clash was brief but intense, a whirlwind of noise, fear, and determination. The rustlers, surprised by the organized resistance, eventually fled, leaving the ranch and homestead intact. When the danger passed, Mary ran toward Clara, sweeping her into her arms. Tears streamed down both their faces as they held each other tightly, feeling the weight of years apart in that single embrace. Clara's voice trembled. "Mama, I was so scared, I missed you every day." Mary stroked her hair gently, whispering words of comfort and love. "I know, my sweet girl. I promised you safety, and we made it through. I've missed you more than you can imagine." Silas watched quietly, respecting the profound moment between mother and daughter. He approached Mary afterward, his expression earnest. "You've done an incredible job, Mary. Clara is strong, brave, and capable because of you." Mary nodded, gratitude in her eyes. "And because of you too, Silas, you kept her safe when I couldn't be there. I'll never forget that." With the danger behind them, life slowly returned to normal. Clara spent more time at the homestead, learning even more from her mother and exploring the plains they once shared. Mary taught her advanced skills, how to read the signs of the weather, care for the animals, and handle difficult situations with patience and wisdom. Clara absorbed every lesson, knowing that each one was a piece of her mother's love, dedication, and hard-earned knowledge. The letters that had once been their only connection were no longer needed daily. Instead, Mary and Clara shared stories in person, laughter echoing across the homestead, and quiet moments of reflection under the stars. They celebrated small victories, the growth of the garden, the health of the livestock, the success of a difficult task completed together. Each day was a reminder of resilience, sacrifice, and the rewards of unwavering love. Mary's reputation among neighbors grew even stronger. Tales of her courage, resourcefulness, and dedication to her child spread across the region. People admired her ability to survive the harsh conditions of the West and still maintain a heart full of love. Silas continued to assist when needed, but Mary had proven that she could handle the frontier on her own terms. The bond of trust between them remained, built on respect, shared experience, and mutual understanding. Clara blossomed into a confident young woman, grounded in the values her mother instilled and strengthened by the experiences she had at Silas's ranch. She learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. She discovered that love sometimes required difficult decisions, sacrifices, and trust. Most importantly, she realized that her mother's strength was the foundation of her own resilience. One sunny afternoon, Mary and Clara sat on the porch, looking out at the endless plains. Clara leaned against her mother, feeling the steady warmth of her presence. "Mama," she said softly, "I've learned so much, and I know it's because of you. I'll never forget the choices you made to keep me safe." Mary hugged her tightly, her voice full of emotion. "And I'll never forget how brave you've been, my sweet girl. You've grown into everything I hoped you would be." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Mary felt a profound sense of peace. The hardships, sacrifices, and challenges of the past years had forged a life of security, love, and resilience. She looked at Clara, seeing not just the child she had protected, but the strong, capable young woman she had helped shape. Their journey had been difficult, marked by separation, uncertainty, and danger, but it had also revealed the depth of human courage and the unbreakable bond of family. Silas approached them, tipping his hat respectfully. "You've done something remarkable, Mary." "Clara is lucky to have you," Mary smiled, a mixture of gratitude and quiet pride in her eyes. "And I was lucky to have help when I needed it most. The world is harsh, but people can be good if we trust and act with love." The story of Mary and Clara became a quiet legend among the frontier communities. A tale of sacrifice, bravery, and the lengths a mother would go to protect her child. Travelers passing through would hear of the widow who survived alone, the rancher who offered guidance and safety, and the young girl who grew into strength and wisdom through love and care. But for Mary and Clara, it was never about fame or recognition. It was about survival, reunion, and the enduring power of love. Each day was a new chance to grow, work together, and enjoy the fruits of their labor. They celebrated small moments of joy, gathering eggs, tending crops, riding across the plains, and cherished quiet evenings under the stars, sharing stories, laughter, and dreams for the future. The Wild West remained a place of challenge and unpredictability, but Mary and Clara had learned to face it together. They had endured separation, danger, and uncertainty, yet emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever. Their story was a testament to courage, sacrifice, and the unshakable bond between a mother and her child. In the end, Mary knew that the greatest victory was not in the survival of crops, fences, or homestead, but in the reunion with her daughter. Clara had grown into a brave, capable, and loving young woman, and Mary had proven that even in the harshest of worlds, a mother's love could endure, protect, and guide. And as they stood together on the porch, watching the wind sweep across the endless plains, both Mary and Clara felt a sense of completion. The trials of the past were behind them, the future full of promise, and the bond they shared stronger than ever. They had survived the Wild West, not just through skill and courage, but through love, the one force that had carried them through every storm, danger, and challenge along the way.